We're starting a brand new series called Important Relationships. And we're going to take a look at some advice that God gives about some relationships we have in our lives, okay? Today we're going to start with husbands and wives, okay? And if you're not married or you go, hey, I'm not planning on getting married, so maybe I'm not really going to check into this one, what I would like to say is this applies to just more than married people. This applies to everyone in our relationships. You can apply this in just about every relationship, but specifically for husbands and wives will be awesome, okay? Or if you're planning on getting married, this will be huge for you, okay? Next Sunday, we're going to talk about parents and children. We're all children, so we all have that. We all have that in common, that we have to know how to deal with our parents. We'll talk a little bit about that and how do parents deal with their kids, and what does the Bible have to say about that. And then the last week, we're going to talk about employers and employees. You might not know the Bible speaks to that, but if you're at work and you're going, man, I need some advice, then be here that Sunday. If you know anybody that wants to come to that, please invite them. So here's what I want to do. And just for you guys online, we're going to show a short video clip for copyright purposes. We're allowed to show it here. We're not allowed to show it online, so I'm going to edit it out. But it is called The Tale of Two Brains by Mark Gungor, and we'll give you a link, and you guys can look that up later. So anyway, we're going to show a short video clip. So we showed that video. So I do want to say to people online, we will post a link at the bottom of the YouTube, and we'll probably post it on Facebook as well, so you guys can watch the video as well. For those of you that are in here, I wanted to say that if you want the entire seminar, which we went through as a church, that is now all available on YouTube, so you can look it up. But if you want the handouts, we got a whole book study that we did on it and everything. I can send you that. It's all in PDF and stuff like that. If you want a copy of that, just write it on your connection card. I'll send it all out to you, and you can do it. It's several hours long, but it's Mark Gungor, and he's super funny. I like him a lot. And he's helped us in our marriage a whole lot, okay? So just want to make sure you added that part to you. So you might be saying, hey, why did you share that? And it has to do with what we're going to talk about today, and it should make sense in just a minute. And so what I want to do is I simply want to share a passage of Scripture with you today. It's Ephesians chapter 5. Now, before you look at it, I want to say I will explain it. Please don't check out on me, because I do understand in the day's time that we live in, this could be one of the most controversial passages of scriptures that we could read. But the other thing I understand is this, is it has some of the most gold nuggets in it that you could have in your marriage. This verse could make you or break you. It could bless you or curse you. It could give you the keys to one of the happiest marriages that you could ever have, okay? So let me get into it. It's found in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 21. Before we go there, I just want to give you a premise just to set it up for you. The Apostle Paul is writing this at the end of his life. He was in jail awaiting some stuff, and he was writing letters to the churches. And it's just kind of funny to me that the Apostle Paul was writing a letter to married people while in prison. Does that make sense? So anyway, it'll dawn on you later. Okay, Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Before we go to the next verse, I just want to say this is a keystone verse for this passage. If you don't get this one, a lot of times it's left out. In fact, I've even taught it that way as well, because you want to get right into here's what men do, here's what women do. But if you don't get this first part right, nothing else will work. This is so pivotal to not only your marriage, but to your life. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Verse 22, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as unto the Lord. Verse 23, for the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church, his body of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Now, that was a mouthful, and I spent a lot of time reading. Oftentimes we focus in on a few verses. I wanted to give you the whole thing, and in no way can I unpack all of this verse today, okay? But what I'd like to do is really lean into the first verse and the last one. And the in between, I want to describe a little bit, because when you understand it, you're going to want to come back to this again and again and again. So let me explain just a little bit about it, and then we'll get into it with some very practical help for married couples, non-married couples, anybody that's in this room. There's going to be some help in how you deal with people, how you deal with married couples, how you expect to get married, and really life itself. So with that said, here's what I want to describe. The first thing that I see as we look at this verse is this. When we say wives submit to their husbands, I think that's probably one of the most controversial things we can say in our society. And one of the reasons why is because I believe the church, when we go back through church history, has used this verse incorrectly and interpreted it incorrectly, meaning that what it does not mean is this. It never means that you should submit to abuse. Never. Okay? And I know that, unfortunately, with some of the dark history through church history, it has been used that way. That many times it's saying, hey, you could submit to abuse, or it's okay for that to happen, and it has this kind of horribleness to it, and that's why some people don't even want this passage read. I've had some people say that. They're like, hey, I don't want that read at my wedding, because they just didn't understand it. With that said, just let me give that caveat and make it crystal clear. There's no excuse for abuse. If you're abusing, this verse does not mean that, and God does not condone that. In no way should you submit to abuse. If you're being abused, or your husband's doing something like that, or your wife is doing something like that, let us know and we can get you help, because there's no excuse for that. 2 is this: it does not mean that women are inferior. God created us and made it clear roles. That's true, and this verse lays out roles, but in no way does that mean that women are inferior to men or God made them lesser. That's not what it means. 2, and the last thing is this: it doesn't mean that women cannot have natural born leadership ability. Please don't read into that what it's not saying. It does mean this, though, and this is one that I think most people really like when they actually hear it. It means that men, we are to take our God-given responsibility to be the spiritual lead in our home. And the one thing I see in the culture, at least here, is that a lot of men shirk that and say, oh, no, that's my wife's responsibility to handle the religious stuff. And if you think that, one day you'll give an account to God whether you agree with this or not. It is our responsibility to lead our home, not to demand submission, but just like it says, to love our wives as Christ loved the church. And here's what I know: if you love her like Christ did, which won their love, I've never seen a woman yet that didn't understand biblical submission, believe me. And you will have the happiest home that you can imagine if you were to do that. We'll talk more about roles at another time. We've preached on that in the past, and we'll talk through that, and that probably takes a lot of time. What I want to do today is I simply want to focus on something else I think comes out of this passage. And this is going to put together why we showed the clip with Mark Gungor talking about how do we understand, why is it important to understand each other, which is what I really believe this verse is talking about. And really putting together the first verse and the last verse, to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then the last one is this: husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands. And what does that mean? You know, it doesn't ever say one time, wives, love your husbands. Did you know that? Isn't that weird? Because I believe that it does. It's just that we don't understand what it's saying. So let me explain why I think this verse is actually light years ahead in psychology way back in ancient times when they were living so backward. I can't even tell you, okay? So here's what it actually means. It means understanding men and women, how to love them, because we're made different, if you didn't know. Here's what I know. We're celebrating 24 years of marriage today, which is pretty awesome for me. And Marie has put up with a lot over the last 24 years, which is pretty incredible that she's still married to me. And I'm so blessed by that. But one of the things that we've learned, and in no way am I impugning, because some of you guys have been married twice as long as I have, and so you might have advice for me. But from the scriptures and from what we're seeing right here, I want to share just some advice for you. And understanding each other is really what I think this is talking about. The first thing I see is this, understanding the difference between men and women. Here are the 2 love languages, and you can write them down. The love language for a man is respect. I want to explain what I mean by that, because men should respect their wives too. What I mean is that is the most essential language. That's why he's telling them, he's saying, wives, respect your husbands. Because you have no idea the power you have in respecting them or disrespecting them. We don't mean in the sense of, hey, he's just better and higher. What we mean is this, you can build him up or you can tear him down. When you build him up, you have no idea how much life you're speaking into him and into your marriage. When you tear him down, you have no idea the wedge that you're driving between you. And you may not realize the power that you have with that. You know, the number one thing I know after 24 years of marriage is this, my wife believes in me. You know how important that is to me? You might have no idea. When no one else does, she does. If you do that, I'm going to tell you what, you're going to have a marriage that you cannot believe. You have an ability to complete your man. The love language for a woman, and I've asked several of them, and I know several of them, so I think this is accurate. This may not be the right word, but it has that connotation. Feelings. That's what's important to them. Because it's not that you disrespect them, it's that the way you love them, you throw it through the way you make them feel. Do you make them feel safe? Not just what you do for them, but how you make them feel. And if you don't get that, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to drive a wedge that you cannot believe. If you get it, you're going to have a happy marriage. This will make you or break you. It will bless you or curse you. I just gave you the keys to a happy marriage. You might not understand it yet. That's why you may have to come back to it again. So now we're going to get kind of practical. 2 keys to a happy marriage. You ready? Number one, put God first. You want to know why I went back to Ephesians when we said, hey, let's go back to the first part of that passage where it says what? Submit to one another. Let me tell you something. If you're a man and you're real religious and you're going, well, I don't like that because wives are supposed to submit to me, you don't get it. We submit to each other. If you can't submit, let me tell you something, nobody else is going to submit to you, nor should they. If you're not submitted to Christ, if you don't know how to submit, nobody should submit to you. Does that make sense? So please understand, that's exactly how he starts the passage. Now I'm saying that because it's not the first part that's so important. You know what it is? It's the second part. Reverence for Christ. Reverence for Jesus. You know what he's saying? The keys to the best life. The keys to the best relationship. You want to know what it is? Putting God first. Let me ask you a question. Do you? In your relationship, in your marriage, when you make decisions, I'm going to get very practical right here because it's the same thing for me and it's challenging me because even as a pastor, I know a lot of the right things. That doesn't mean I always do them. And the biggest one is this. When you're making decisions in your marriage, what do you do first? Do you make a decision or do you go to God? You may be saved, but let me ask you a question. Are you a follower of Jesus? When a big decision has to be made, do you pause and seek God's advice? Or do you just go, well, God gave me a brain and I'll take it from here? And only when you're in a major crisis do you ever actually consider God's advice. When I don't know anything, then I finally go to him, right? Is that what you do? And no wonder he keeps taking you to those places because he's waiting on you to go, are you going to actually ask me? Submit to one another out of what? Reverence for Christ. It means you're never going to submit to each other until you have reverence for Christ, until you put him first. So let me challenge those of you that are considering being married. As a pastor that has some experience with people that I've taken through pre-marriage counseling, and unfortunately, I've learned the hard way to not say it too plainly means that I've had some of my marriages, that not my marriage, but I've had people that I've dealt with in that are now divorced. And it hurts. But one of the reasons is this, is because we didn't hit this hard enough to say, let me ask you a question before you decide to get married to somebody. Do they put God first? If they don't, can I tell you something? You're not going to fix them. And every person in the room that's married to somebody that's not saved, it doesn't mean you should not be married anymore. God will help you through that and bring them to Christ. But they would tell you, I believe every person that's been divorced, I'm not here to pick on you today because I believe you go from where you're at. But what I would tell you is they would tell you, hey, find out for sure, is that person, are we going to put God first together? And if they're not, you're not ready to get married. Does that make sense? Please, please, please take that warning for what it's worth. I know that's hard, but here's the thing. It will save you so much of your life. Put God first. That's number one. The other thing I want to add with putting God first is this. If you're in a relationship and you go, you know what, that's so true, and it's too late for me because I've done messed up. That's not true. God loves you right where you are. And I want you to hear that today, that in this verse, that doesn't mean because you messed up, then, your life is trash and your marriage is, and that God can't put back the years the locusts have destroyed and all the rest. I want to tell you that, Mark Gungor in his seminar, if you ever watch it, he says something about marriage. He says, sometimes we just get to the place where, you know what we got to do? We just got to hit the reset button, It's kind of like when you're keeping score and you go, hey, the score is so out of whack that nobody could ever catch up, or I've messed up so bad I don't know what to do. Sometimes you just have to hit the reset button. Sometimes you have to forgive and let them reset. Does that make sense? And if you'll let God come in and the blood of Jesus Christ and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, he can heal things that you don't think is possible. Number one, you got to put God first. Okay. Number two. This is a golden nugget. This just changed my life more than anything else. Love your spouse how they're made, not just how you're made. If you get that, you have the keys to a loving relationship. You have the keys to a happy relationship. Believe me when I tell you, this will help in other relationships as well. That if you understand this, love the other person how they're made, not how you are. Now the problem is this, you're probably going to think everybody's made like you, but they're not. Okay? Not everybody's made like we are. And I want to make sure we get that. And that's what I believe. When you look at Ephesians chapter 5 and you go back and you reread it, what you're going to see is you're going to be hearing a passage that says, this is how men are made. This is how women are made. Love them how they're made. You see this, I'm going to tell you what, it's going to change your life. If you don't, you're going to struggle like I did. I thought I was real smart when we first got married. I know my wife. I love my wife. We fell in love. We had a great relationship. We had a kid together, and we're serving at church together. And I remember us going through some material together. I'm going to give you two pieces. One was a resource that we got from Gary Chapman, and it's at the bottom of your page. It's a book called 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. If you've never read it, it will open your eyes to things to say, not everybody's made like you. Please don't vilify people that are not made like you. I used to do that, right? It's like, what's wrong with you? I'm made like this. You should be too, right? I mean, don't do that, because they're made different. And it talks about, hey, what you love to do may not be what they do. And the 5 love languages could help you a lot. And there's some tests even online that are free you can take and figure it out. It'll help you with your husband, wife, and understanding other people. And you're like, man, I never knew that. And so you start to do the things that would be deposits for them instead of withdrawals. The other book that I'd recommend is not a Christian book per se, but it has some Christian principles. It's called 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Marriage. Okay? And it's written by Stephen Covey, who also wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And when I first saw the book, I thought, oh, Stephen Covey just repackaged the book and then put marriage on it, And it's like, it actually wasn't. I thought it was. And then it had some tests in it. And so me and Marie, after we had Wyatt, and after we were serving in church and stuff like that, we decided to take one of the tests. And I thought, oh, I know her. I know her better than anybody else. And I found out, no, I don't. I didn't know that. And so we started talking about emotional deposits and withdrawals. You ever heard of those? Deposits are things that you do for the other person, and then as you do those for them, it builds them up. Does that make sense? It's like, hey, you deposit into them. It's like an investment, and you're going, man, I do this for them, and it makes them feel really good and builds them up and gives them energy. Withdrawals are things that sometimes you have to have withdrawals, but it's like this retracts energy. This is not good, right? I mean, it's like this burns them out. This is the things that you go, hey, you have to do this, but it takes energy away from them. And if you don't understand them, what you'll think is, I'm making deposits when I was actually making withdrawals. That's what happened to me. And I'm doing a lot of energy to do this deposit that's actually a withdrawal for my wife. So I'll give you an example. She's not made like me. I'm extroverted. She's introverted. I didn't actually know the difference, okay? Maybe you do. It means that I draw energy off of being around people. That costs her energy. It doesn't mean she doesn't like people. It means she has to have time to herself to get energy. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you vilify that type of personality, you will do a disservice because they have gifts and talents that a person that's extroverted doesn't have. She has so many gifts that I don't have because she can reflect. She can do those things. So what I thought I thought, hey, you know what I like? I like to be the center of attention. I don't know if you knew that, but but I'm kind of big on that. It strokes my ego, and I love it. I mean, it's just the way I'm made. I mean, it's my personality. God made me that way, and there's nothing wrong. Don't vilify that, okay? Got it. But I thought a nice thing to do for her one time was we were teaching at a church, and I was in charge of the small group ministries, and so I decided that, hey, there was 300 people in the room, and I thought a good idea would be, hey, it's Marie's birthday today, and so when I got up to introduce her, I said, hey, we celebrate birthdays as community groups, and by the way, it's my wife's birthday today, and I had everybody sing happy birthday to her right before she got ready to present. Now, if you're extroverted, you go, what's wrong with that, right? If you're introverted, you're going, that was horrible, okay? I mean, it really was. And I had no idea. I didn't have no idea because she didn't let on to it. You would never know that it bothered her. But when she wrote in that thing, withdrawals, in the test that we took from 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, she wrote that one of the worst memories I ever have is you doing that. And I thought, I was actually doing it to be nice, right? I mean, I thought I was making a deposit. And she goes, do you know when we go out and you had everybody sing happy birthday to me every time we go out to eat, whether it's my birthday or not? Because you want the free cake? Okay. That's not cool. I mean, I hate it. I literally hate it. It makes my skin crawl. It makes me have panic attacks like you can't believe. And I was like, I had no idea. In fact, I was planning a surprise party, and she's like, you know what I'd really hate is a surprise party. I'm thinking, oh, I mean, she really means it. I thought she was just being falsely modest, like, oh, yeah, I don't want anybody to make over me. But it was like, no, she really meant it. And I was like, man, that was so insightful. Here I am trying to do something for her, and I was actually doing the wrong thing. Because you know why? Because I was loving her how I was made, not how she was. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how the other person's made? Or do you vilify how they're made? You want to really damage your marriage? Make them into the villain. Oh, you should be like that. You should appreciate when people do that for you. Don't do that. Everybody's made different. God made them how they are. And trust me when I tell you, you'll regret if you do that because they have so many gifts. And Marie is so much more gifted than I am in so many ways. But I got to tell you, it helped our marriage in ways you cannot believe. Same thing happened for her and me. And we just learned how to be honest and be able to approach that together. So learn. By the way, that's going to take some time, okay? So here's what I want to do with the time we have left. I want to give you 4 things, 4 practices that will help you with this, okay? 4 practices that will help you with this. Number 1, go to God first. I thought you just said that. I did. And I'm saying it again. Because you know why? Because I got to tell you, it'll be the most counterintuitive thing you'll ever do. So I have to say it again, as a practice. You got to remind yourself, you got to write it down. If I could get you to do it, if you were into tattoos, get you a tattoo right here and say, go to God first. Because it will help you in your life like you cannot believe, okay? Go to God first. We explained that, so we won't get back into it again, but I just want to make sure you get that. Go to God first. Number 2, take time to communicate. It is much harder than you think. Take it from a communicator, okay? I stand up here week after week. I get to communicate. I learn from a lot of communicators, but here's what I know. You know how hard it is to communicate? Let me tell you about this church plant thing. I had people that after we have said we're going to be Rivers United Church, our first service is on March the 1st. March the 1st. Did you hear me? We put it in print. We put it on Facebook. We put it everywhere. Our service is March the 1st. Did you know that some of you guys showed up at Coastal City Church the next week? I'm not pointing, I'm just laughing. But you know why I'm laughing? Because that's how we hear it. I'm not saying it's your fault. What I'm saying is it was on everything. And you go, well, how do we know that? Because it's on everything. It's on the bathroom. It's in the bathroom, on the flyer. It's on everything. But we didn't hear it, right? The reason why I'm telling you that is this. It doesn't matter how much you say, right? You're thinking, if I said it, everybody heard me. That's not true. That's simply not true. If you think you're communicating just because you're talking, you couldn't be more wrong. So here's what I'm telling you. You have to slow down in your communication. If you're frustrated with not being able to communicate well, and you're mad at the other person for not understanding you, you're not slowing down, okay? If you're frustrated, they just don't hear. I said it, and they just don't hear me. You're right. You're right. They're not going to. And you're going to be frustrated, they're going to be frustrated, and it's not going to help your marriage. Do you want to be right, or you want to be married? You get me? It's not so much that you're not true. It's not so much that what you're saying is not true or what they're not saying. It's the perspectives. And what you got to see is they're seeing the world through a completely different lens. And when you get that, it's going to help you in ways that you cannot believe. To communicate, fast is slow and slow is fast. You hear me? Don't try to be efficient. You efficient people, perfect people, those kind of people, you got to really lean into this, that with relationships, fast is slow and slow is fast. You hear me? Don't try to be efficient with it. Take the time, and it's going to do wonders for your relationship. Now, what do I mean by that? There was another habit in the 7 habits of highly effective families, the one practice that he gave us that helped us more than anything else. In fact, I'll tell you this, the reason why I'm sharing it today is it cut out 95% of our arguments. That's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, it transformed our relationship. So I tell every person I can about this one. A lot of people don't do this, and a lot of people come back to me with the same problems, and I go, hey, are you doing that? Yeah, no, we don't really have time for that. We don't really need that. Didn't really work for us because we didn't do it, okay? I'm telling you, it's going to sound stupid because it did to me. I was like, psychobabble, don't care about it. But man, I'll tell you what, here's what you want to live like no one else, you got to live like no one else. You want to get different results, you got to do something different. So if this sounds stupid, then you probably need to do it, because if what you're doing is not working, put this into your life. I'm only telling you because it is gold if you get it, okay? And it's this, having a family meeting. Now let me set up for why it's so important. Let me ask you a question. When do you talk to your spouse about stuff? Do you just do like we did when we first got married? We said, we don't need to set aside time to talk. We're with each other all the time, right? I see you all the time. So I'll just tell you as I'm passing whatever I need to let you know. Can I tell you how that works for people that are made completely different, that are speaking 2 different languages, that opposites attract and then they attack? Okay, anyway. It's like watching an episode of Animal Planet. You know, you're like, oh, marriage, you know. Why? Because we don't mean the same thing. So we have to be completely focused for a small period of time. And it may not be the best time to talk. You know, half of us, the reason why we're arguing isn't because of what's said, it's because of when it's said. But the only reason why it's done then is because there is no other time. So I'll give you an example. When me and Marie were married, she said, hey, John, I want you to change the air filters. I didn't hear that. Okay? I may have even said yes, but I don't remember it. I never remembered that. I still don't remember it to this day, and it's etched in my mind because it was an emotional experience because of what happened next. And so she kept telling me, and I guess she said that she had told me several times, and I never heard that. She actually took the air filters and put them out because she's short and she can't reach them. And so she put them out in front of the door. And I remember coming home from a meeting. I had been working all day. I was hungry. I hadn't ate yet. I had a big meeting at church. I came home. I tripped over the air filters. I kicked it across the room, and she just about lost it. She was like, you know, I've been asking you to put these air filters in, blah, 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 blah. And how do you think that went, right? I'm tired. I never heard you say it in the first place. I told her that. That made her even madder, and we're blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying we were yelling, but our voices, our decimals were probably a little louder than, yeah, we were yelling, okay? And so we were like, right? And then at the end of that, we feel bad because it's like, oh man, I didn't mean to say it like that. So I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, and we make up. But you know what the problem is? The air filters are still right there. Nothing changed. The reason for the family meeting is this. What if you had a family meeting where once a week you talk for 15 to 20 minutes to make plans? And when she told me then, I have a system. I have a to-do list that if it's not on it, it doesn't get done. Does that make sense? Because I don't think about it. If it's not on that to-do list, there is nothing in my mind, believe me, most of the time. Because I can't remember it. I won't, because my mind is constantly going. I do 1,000 things. I like to be involved in many things, so I'll never remember. So if it doesn't go on my list, it doesn't get done. And once it did, guess what? The air filter started getting done. And it took care of problems you couldn't believe because we had time to talk. I'll tell you the other thing it did. It helped us come together on calendar. I learned a lot about her during a family meeting. Just 20 minutes a week we took to say, hey, this is the best time to talk to me, and we made sure that was a priority. So on my day off, we spent 20 minutes together just talking about plans. Not 3 hours, not a summit, just a meeting that said, hey, here's the priorities that we want to get around to. So we started talking about some things. And she said, John, you know, one of the issues that I have is this. I'm introverted, and I can't be out every night of the week. I know you like it, And when you do that, or when you do things like this, you'll be at church and you'll tell people, this is before we were here, thank God we got that taken care of before I became a pastor, but I would tell people, you know, in front of her, hey, is it all right if they come over to eat tonight? And she's going, you know, what do you say when you're in front of people? Yeah, sure, you know. And so they come over, and then later on, she doesn't say anything, but she's drained. Does that make sense? And she said, I can't do it that many nights. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about how many nights I can go out, right? And that helps so much to go. And one of the biggest things we found was this. It was like, hey, I could use some time to myself. And I was like, hey, I could use some more time out. So what if I took Wyatt, I went off and hang out with my friends, and then when I come home, would that make you happy? And she's like, yeah. And by the way, it did. It wasn't just like she said it. I came home, she's totally refreshed, I'm totally refreshed. We're celebrating, and she's saying how great of a husband I am for going out and hanging out with my friends. You know what I mean? So it was like, how could that be? How could it be that simple? Because we started to talk. I'll tell you the other thing. We decided, hey, maybe we need to spend more time together and go out on date night, you know? We said, what if we put it on the calendar? And that way it became a priority. You know why other things are a priority? You know why you don't miss work? Because it's every week, right? I'd never miss work, but I'll miss date night. You know what? That job will come and go, but that spouse is going to be with you supposedly forever, right? But we invest more in a job that's temporary than we ever do our spouse. Think about that for a minute. You hear me? Why isn't it on the calendar? But here's the thing about the calendar that's the big deal. Can I tell you what it is? It's measurable. When people say, we need to spend more time together, how much? Oh, well, I don't really want to say. I just think more. No, you just want to complain about more, right? So you go, no, put it down, make it measurable, talk it out. That's why a family meeting is so important. So now all of a sudden you can go, okay, we decided together we're going to go out once a month. Now, you perfect people got to be careful. Well, we only did it twice this month, not 4 times. This is about progress, not perfection. And if you get that, you'll start to go, oh, wow. So if we look back at it and we go, you know what we did? Last year, we only went out on 1 date. But this month, we went out on 2. Man, that's awesome, right? Or if we look back at it and we go, man, we blew it. We didn't spend any time together. We got to make an adjustment, right? It's been 3 months and we haven't spent any time together. Or it helps reinforce to the insecure person. This is big. You want to hear what this is? The insecure person that thinks, even though you've been spending time with them, they still have the past they're holding on to. And they go, well, we just don't spend any time together. And then all of a sudden, when you're in the family meeting, not to be mean or not to go, hey, let me show you something, but it's to go, but we are. And you know what that did for that person and even me when I would think that? Like, I don't know if I'm doing enough. And then all of a sudden you're going, but we did. And that person's going, oh yeah, we did. And they start to feel better because they actually see it as being measurable. I'm telling you, man, the family meeting will make you or break you. It will bless you or curse you. Make sure you take time for that, okay? I got 2 more, okay? The next one is this. Take time for fun. You know why most marriages, there's a wedge in them? Is because you know why they go looking for another person? Because it's not fun anymore. We don't have time for fun, right? We're too tired at the end of the day. You got to save energy for it. You got to help the other person. You can't just be the big kid and make them do all the work and then expect them to have energy for fun. But here's what I want to tell you. Take time for fun, or people will look for it somewhere else. Somebody at work is looking for them, right? Somebody that they run into is looking for them. Somebody on social media is giving them compliments. Somebody on social media is saying they're fun, and they're going, I just want to take a break. Now, please don't think I'm saying that's an excuse for going looking. If that's what you're doing, let me tell you something. The grass is not greener on the other side. Take that from a pastor that's watched people with multiple failed marriages, okay? The grass is not greener on the other side, and if it is, it's only because it's over the septic tank, and I'll just leave it at that, okay? So don't be doing that stuff. Work on what you have, okay? Work on what you have. So I'll give you 3 things to do that will help you take time for fun. One is this. Try to spend 15 minutes a day as a couple. Measure that. Put that on your to-do list. 15 minutes a day. Now, when I say that, I don't mean talking about the kids. I don't mean talking about bills. I mean talking like you did when you were first together. And you know what? It's going to be harder now than it's ever been. The problem with spending time and taking fun now is when you first got together, you weren't comfortable with each other. So you loved having fun all the time, right? Now you love fun, you just have to save energy for it. So it's intentional. That's why in the Proverbs it says what? It says, rejoice in the wife of your youth. And then it gets very explicit. Okay, I won't go there, but it does. Okay? And why am I saying that? And it says it over and over. Why? It's saying it's intentional. Are you being intentional? Do you know how much 15 minutes is? That's 1% of your waking hours. If you can't spend that together, I'm not real sure that you're going to have fun in your marriage. Drink a cup of coffee together. Go for a walk together. Do something that's intentional. And here's how it's going to work. You're going to go, it's draining. I don't know if I'm going to like doing it, but here's the thing. When you act on it, then the feelings will come. And all those feelings will come back, and you're going to have a great marriage where you're going to enjoy it, okay? That 15 minutes a day as a couple. At least twice a month, go on a date night. That doesn't mean you have to spend money. Doesn't mean you need to go somewhere, maybe put kids to bed early, but make it intentional where we're going to spend time together. We're going to turn off our phone. We're not going to let anybody else get to this time, right? The kids don't get that time. Well, my kids come first. Well, they shouldn't. Because when they're moved out of the house, you're still going to have a marriage, right? And you know what's the best thing for your kids is for you guys to be happy. Is that true? You guys to have a happy marriage is going to be the best thing for your kids, so take the time, believe me. Not all your time, don't neglect your kids, but for, 2 hours, twice a month, you should be able to do that. And then once a year, get away as a couple, whether it be one night, a week, whatever you can afford, right? A month. No, I'm just playing. None of us can do that. But a couple nights. Whether it be, maybe it's going camping, maybe it's doing something cheap, whatever. Maybe it's the kids stay somewhere else and you get your own house, whatever. But take the time because it's worth it for your marriage, okay? Go to God first. Take time to communicate. Take time for fun. And number 4, get help from other people. Don't do this alone. God never intended for you to do all of this by yourself. Have some people that are investing in you. So I'll give you a couple of ways to do that. Number 1, join a community group. Do you have any mentors in your life? Now, not everybody in your group, some of the people in your group are crazy, okay? Don't go to them. Don't go to people for advice that are just, they're going through divorce every other day and stuff like that. I'm not picking on you if you are, but I'm just saying you don't go to a person, you don't say, hey, look, that person's 100 pounds overweight. I'm going to go to them for advice on how I can lose weight. Whatever they're doing, just don't do that, okay? And so if it looks like, hey, their relationships are always falling apart, you're going, hey, whatever they're doing, do the opposite, okay? But go to some people that you go, I want what they have. Look, it looks like their kids are fairly successful and they love them. They're getting away together. They actually enjoy each other. They have it's good things going on in their life. Go to them and say, hey, would you tell me how to do that? They'd love to tell you that, okay? Even if it's a second marriage, go find a couple that's got a second marriage and it's really working well for them. And find out how to make that work. I'm telling you, it will be worth its weight in gold. If you need professional help, some of us don't want to do that, but you go, hey, if you're really struggling or there's issues that are beyond the norm or whatever, don't be afraid to get professional help. Eden Counseling is what I would recommend. There's several other ones, and I can give you several lists if you want to talk to us about your specific thing. And go there, and I'll tell you what, it's like getting the Rosetta Stone for your marriage. That's like a language thing that makes language easier. It'll give you the language barriers for your relationship. It'll get you there further, faster. You know how many people have taken me up on that? I would probably tell you 99% of people tell me, nope, not going to do counseling. And that's one of the reasons why 60% of marriages probably end in divorce. You understand? Okay. Enough said. Last one is this. One of the biggest problems that are in marriage, there's 2 things that people face. One is sex, problems in the sexual realm. Get counseling for that. I'm not going to talk about it today. Okay. The second one is money. Do you know? Money is the number 1 problem in marriages. Here's my suggestion. What changed me and Marie's life and has transformed the way we view money and taken one of the biggest barriers that could be off of us was to get some help learning how to manage our money God's way. Financial Peace University changed our lives. So I would recommend, there's a link at the bottom for daveramsey.com. If you've never taken the class, or maybe you started taking the class and never got through it, go back and take it. We're not going to be offering it for a while. We're going through this church merger, and then we're going to be offering it again. Don't wait. Sign up. It's online for free. There's other churches offering it. Dave Ramsey's website has a list of them. Sign up for it today. It's more important than anything else you'll do, because I got to tell you, the number 1 problem in marriage, when you hear people going through divorce, you know what it is? The stress that managing money causes. So please get some help, okay? So here's how I'll wrap up today. This is a whole list of things to do in marriage. Don't try to do them all, okay? You'll overwhelm yourself. You're going to go, oh, I can't do any of this. Start with just one thing. What's one of these things that you could apply to your marriage this week? What's one step that you could take and give it to God and say, God, I'm going to put you first, and what we're going to do is we're going to try. What could we do? How could we start? And just start. And if you start slowly you'll start to add these things to your life, and your marriage and your relationships will get better and better and better. Okay? We've got a lot more to talk about next week, but for today, can we apply this to our lives? Okay. Let's stand for prayer. Father God, we come before you today, Lord. I don't know if there's anything trickier to talk about than our marriages, because you've taken two people that couldn't be less alike and put them together. But Lord, when you did that, it was an amazing thing. The greatest joy in my life comes from my marriage. And I thank you for that. I thank you for putting us together. And I pray a blessing over each person here that's married. Lord, I pray a blessing over each person here that's not married. And those that are seeking marriage. Lord, whatever their situation is, God, I pray a blessing over them and give them wisdom as we try to understand each other. For all of us, God, help us to love other people how they're made. But we can only do that when we submit to you, when we start to see that we don't always have the right viewpoint. Maybe it's not just a right and wrong viewpoint. Maybe it's just we think differently. God, help us with that. God, I pray for the ones that maybe, Lord, just in this moment, like, Lord, somebody here maybe has been abused and they just don't know how to love correctly. God, help them to find the help that they need, that they might be able to love, but also to be loved. And that these barriers that hold us back, Lord, maybe we just need you in just a mighty way to come in and fix some of the things that we have. God, some of us, we love our spouse, but Lord, I have a feeling there's somebody here that they're struggling with going. We just don't communicate, and it's like it's squeezed the love out of our lives. I'm praying, God, maybe you can help them reset. Lord, as we start to put these things into practice and understand each other, that you make our marriages healthier and happier and a source of refuge and strength for not only us, but for our children and the people around us. And that we'll give you all the honor and glory and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.